Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Today I have two Masterlock 5200s. As you can see, one of them is disassembled and the other is sitting here. I tried to record this earlier and my phone died, so I had to stop recording and now I'm picking again. In the first video I did pick this one. I got it open and I did a lot of stuff and I started picking on this one. I'm not going to restart everything. I'm going to try to pick this lock, and then I'm going to explain some things about the locks. I got these locks from bbtelpics66 on Reddit, bbtelpics on Instagram, and it's bbtel on YouTube. He also sent one of these locks to Joe Picks, and after my phone died, I was watching Joe's video while waiting, and I started picking on this lock a little bit more. So when Joe picked it, he went through and he felt all the pins and he said, well, I don't feel anything, so I'm going to increase my tension. I did the same thing, and I think I got lucky on that lock. So I'm going to start at the back. Found pin 5, and now I'm trying to find pin 4, and I just set it. And I'm not sure if I set 5 or if I slipped off of 5. So I'm going to come to the front. Two, and I think I have 3 set. Okay. I think I just got 1. Working really lightly on 1. Now 2. Trying to stay on the tip of 2. Okay, let's see if I can. I backed the tension wrench off, but I heard some things drop. So let's go all the way to the back again. Four and 5 feel set. Got some movement on 3. I think it's set. Gotta click on 1. 2 doesn't seem to want to move. I'm gonna switch picks here. This is actually the pick I like to use on these types of locks. Americans and master locks. 410s and 1100s. That felt like a good click. There we go. And that was 3. 3 got us open. Okay, so now to explain. One thing is these have BumpStop in them. So Joe noticed that he had to get number 4. And number 4 is very hard to find. And the first couple of times when I went through this lock, I kept only counting 4 pins. And then I realized there was a gap. I wasn't feeling pin 4. And the reason is pin 4 is a high set. Now, I haven't looked at the manual lately, but the American lock manual talks about the bump key has to be over like a number 2 pin. And there's a reason for that. So let me show you the pin stack here for these locks. So I did get the first one, and sorry, I was paying attention to try to get that pin straight. So here are the pins. They're all standard pins except for number 4 is a bump stop. Now that is a key here. The reason is, if we look at the key pin, and it sits, sorry, it turned over my eyes. I can't really see right now. Let me, okay, so the key pin goes in, and it sits in really deep. It's down in there. But this bump pin does not. As you can see, the bump pin, if I can get it to focus, the bump pin has steps on it. And those steps actually prevent it from dropping into the chamber. So there's a gap between the pin, the key pin, and the top pin, that bump stop pin. So if you try to bump the lock, you're just going to hit number 2 up into the, well, into an airspace, basically. Come on. You're going to knock pin 2 up into an airspace. It's not going to be directly on the pin, which is directly connected to the spring. So as you're bumping number 2, it's just flopping around in there with no real momentum and nothing to give it a boost. So when you're picking it, you're also picking that number 2 pin. It's number 4, but it's a pin, height-wise, it's a 2. You're pushing that into dead space first. And if you look, there is not a whole lot of room on that step for it to move up into the keyway. So it's a dead pin until you get it all the way up there. Then it's hard to find. You can barely feel a nub. And then once you set it, it's pretty much gone. It's hard to feel number 4 at that point. Number 4 just kind of disappears. So if it slips back in a little bit, it's dang hard to find number 4. You got to kind of scratch and feel around for it. So I picked number 4, then I got number 5 set. Then from there, it was really light touches, and I wasn't holding a lot of pressure. It was a little bit more than a standard 1100 pressure. And then I was picking on 3, 2, and 1 and just feeling for the slightest little clicks to get those to set. And then finally, going back to number 3, I had to put a little more pressure on number 3, and it finally set and tripped the lock open. But that number 4 really messes you up, because you go through and you think, the first time through, you think, I don't have any pressure. There's no tension. I need to give heavier tension. Nope, you don't. You just have to find that number 4 and get it set. And then you can use lighter pressure. And even Joe, in his video, he says that he was picking his, okay, I think I got it. I'm going to lighten up the pressure now. That was a good thing to do. Whether accident or not, it was obviously it was an educated thought that he had. He knew he needed to let it up from his picking experience, but he made a good decision there. All right, okay. So these locks have been sitting around somewhere because they're kind of corroded, but the insides aren't bad. So I have one taken apart, but I'm going to take this one down and show you what I did. All right. Top spring, bearing, there's another bearing in there. I'm just going to drop it for now. All right. And there's the actuator. So these cores are crimped. So you can't easily got them. That one, obviously I did. And in the previous video, I kind of hurt my finger with the tool I was trying to use. So basically what I did is, again, there's going to be a link to that other video. I kind of sawed into this a little bit with a jeweler's saw. Sorry about bumping that. And this edge is just barely crimped. I tried to, so this side has a small crimp on it. Probably pressure from putting that other far side crimp on it. So I straightened that a little bit. And then I'm going to grab the key since I can. And then move that notch to the other side. So now there's that flat spot there. And I took a straight edge. And I cut it with a little bit with a saw to kind of thin it out so it was easier to push that crimp. And actually, that was unexpected. I was able to push past that crimp quite easily there. So I just dropped the last key pin, or last top pin, sorry. So I'm going to, in what I did in the other video is I used the plug as the follower, and I'll do that again here. So let's see, there's 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and we'll push along. And there's our bump stop pin. There's our spring. And we'll go back to the front. We'll try to get our key pin. That's key pin number 2. I did not plan on gutting this. I was just going to show how to get the crimp undone. And these are all standard pins other than the bump pin. All right, where are we at? And I could just speed gut this, to be honest. I'm leaving the springs in for right now because they're just not coming out. And one thing I did, and it's in the other video, is I did put a little bit of oil. I'm just going to speed gut it. I did put a little bit of oil into the lock because it was just getting to be a pain in the butt. So the pins just weren't moving. And actually, I probably didn't even need to after I discovered everything that was going on with it. But the oil does definitely help. All right. So that's obviously the lock gutted. It's a short core. It's not as long as a standard, it's like an 1/8 inch short. Let's see, this is the back. So it's like an 1/8 inch short compared to a standard core. Now what I'm going to do with both of these is the crimp comes along this back edge. The crimp comes along the back edge here where they pushed in. So I'm going to take a file or my Dremel and I'm going to smooth that down. So then I can just go to Ace or somewhere and I can, sorry, get that, maybe I didn't do this. Okay, so I'm going to smooth that edge down. Sorry, I wasn't watching the camera. I was watching my hands. But it still has the same lip on the back, so I can still put a ring in it, a C-clip in it. So I will go buy a couple of C-clips and here and destroy springs. Come on. As I'm not paying attention. So I'll go buy a couple of C-clips and then I'll grind that off, and then the C-clip can actually work again. Sorry, I'm not paying attention to the cameras enough. Now, the core. These, both Joe and I were under the impression that these were going to be 410 cores, but they're not. They're actually, that's not it. They're actually reversed from a 410. And I happen to have a couple of 410s that had a left-handed keyway. So I was curious. So I dug out the keys, and let's see which one. Yeah, this one. So this is the reversed 410 core with 6 pins, and it's the same keyway. So it is the left-handed 410. I think it's a, what is it, 417? Yeah, 417 keyway instead of a 410 keyway. So I can't use this key because it's too long. But these locks are also key retaining. You can't even turn the key back. So if you unlock it with the key, the shackle pops open. You can't turn the key back at all until the shackle goes back in. I demonstrate that in the other video, and I was trying to figure out exactly why. I'm still going to do more research on that. I believe it has to do with the bearing sits in here, but it can't turn because the bearing is on that flat edge, and it has nowhere to turn until the shackle comes back in, and then it can turn. Which I'm surprised that this is flattened out and that still happens, because the other these 410 Ameican locks, they're a 410 master lock core, but they don't do that. They do not key retain. You can turn them back. So there's something a little bit different, maybe in the clearance of the bearing to the shackle, because that's not a whole lot of cut down. It's flattened, but it's not real deep. So I'm assuming that bearing sitting there does not allow the actuator to turn until it's all the way in, and then it can turn and push the bearing in. So these are key retaining, which is really nice. So yeah, and they're not spring loaded either. So when I unlocked it, there's no spring pressure. There's no spring tension on that core. So once it popped open, my tension wrench flew out, but the lock was still, it didn't snap back shut because it doesn't have a spring, which is kind of nice as well. It's just an interesting lock. It amazes me all the different variations that Master Lock has in their locks. Similar cores, but little things are different in every one, and every lock is a little bit different. You know, you'll find a crimped core in a lock that can be gutted and, you know, the core taken out, but then you have a plastic body where the core cannot be taken out, and it's not crimped. It's got a C-clip on it. So some of the things are just a little odd with Ameican locks and master locks, but overall they're very interesting. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I know I rambled along a little bit, but I wasn't really planning on gutting this second one. I'm kind of glad it opened up, because now I don't have to do it later, but I will be grinding them down, putting C-clips on them, and then they'll be rekeyable. Not that I'm going to rekey them. I mean, I'm not going to build them. Yeah. Unless I did something to alter the key, then I could rekey it, but I'm not going to do that. I'll just put them back the way they were, and they will be eventually, you know, if I ever want to do something, they would be rekeyable. So interesting things, just as to recap, interesting things to note is there's no spring on the core. It's still key retaining, unlike the other ones, and that bump key is very interesting in how it hides that number 4, and if you're not expecting it, it makes it very, very tricky. So I hope you enjoyed this. If you ever get a hold of one of these, they're definitely a fun pick. So thanks for watching, and have a great rest of your day. And if you want to watch the other video, it'll be linked in the description. Thanks.